Like and subscribe. Now let's dive. All right, let's see how long this video stays up online. For the first few minutes of this video, we're just going to refer to this as the pasta fence incident. This is an incident of international renown that deserves a deep dive of its own. I've seen some really solid takes on the matter, like from Flesh Simulator, but I have yet to see a full deep dive into the topic done by anybody. And I suspect this is partially due because of the perception placed on it by the mainstream media and the federal disinformation campaign. And most people, even slightly internet inclined, probably understand that much of the narrative on this story is entirely made up to cover up the reality that is lying beneath it. First though, this is not a political attack. Politics is a psyop and I'm not here for it. That being said, let's get the necessary context out of the way. The origin of most of the email material used today is going to be from what is believed to be a Russian attack on John Podesta's email server. John Podesta is an extremely powerful Washington, D.C. figure with close ties to the Clinton family and was essentially running Hillary Clinton's 2016 election campaign. Another important figure to know is his brother named Tony Podesta that owns the Podesta Group, one of the most influential lobbying firms in America. Lobbying being, you know, that cheeky little way that ultra wealthy people can influence the entire fate of the nation and political decisions, aka bribery but by a different name. And as we go on, we'll introduce the secondary characters in this narrative as they emerge, but it's important to recall that Hillary and Bill Clinton are implicated in this both by being close to the Podestas, but also via Hillary's appearances in the emails. That's the basics that one must understand in order to be prepared for everything coming next. And beware, this is a descent into madness unlike anything you have ever seen, and the people implicated have shaped and are shaping your life as we speak in ways you could never imagine. And I'm going to do my best to avoid repeating what has been said 1,000 times, so stick with me because as these episodes continue and the deeper we go, you're going to hear things that you would have never thought were possible. Enter Edgar Madison Welch. In typical Patsy fashion, nearly no images exist of him on the entire internet, and I can confirm only a very small handful of photos that are attributed to him. Roughly the same amount of photos as you'd find candy in your hand after getting mugged on Halloween night, which is red flag number 1 for me because the prevailing narrative is that this is a fellow both chronically online and who has been lurking in quote-unquote right-leaning spaces since the birth of the internet. So like the rest of his generation, I would expect at least a couple dozen unique photos at minimum. Moreover, one of the few photos we do have of him in Lee Harvey Oswald fashion, another infamous patsy, Edgar is holding what seems to be the firearm he would later use in the Comet ping pong incident. I guess to make it more convenient for future news articles to write about him. Ostensibly though, in the eyes of the mainstream media, Edgar Welch was a quote-unquote far-right internet lurker who became enthralled with the story being spun in 2016 about an elite ring operated to some extent by Kill and Hillary Clinton. I'm sorry, a writer's error there, don't worry, he's been fired. That Bill and Hillary Clinton were operating an invite-only child trafficking ring for the most powerful. And these emails hid the truth about that behind terms like cheese pizza, hot dog, lollipop, and all sorts of other things. And obviously such a ring has no precedent in history and is lunatic level conspiracy theory. Just ignore the past 100 years of information though. As the election creeps closer, the story grows from more niche online circles like 4chan to Facebook, where man, the boomers got involved and so did the bots, and this story got relayed to a huge portion of Facebook users that unknowingly ate this story hook, line, and sinker. And for a certain period, a robust portion of Americans believed to varying degrees that the Clintons were involved in a child trafficking ring. But it wasn't merely internet posts and bots forwarding these posts to various accounts with claims of such actions that caused a growing outrage. It was the fact that there is seemingly a mountain of evidence for these claims. And this evidence was based out of a cryptic and not so cryptic set of messages uncovered from John Podesta and fellow Hillary Clinton staffers, as well as other powerful connected political allies. These emails got out, as we discussed, when Jonathan Podesta's email was hacked. And the most alarming thing that were noticed were these references to satanic rituals, child trafficking, and other demonic activities. I mean that last part very literally, as you will see later on. In theory, there should be no such references found or anything that can even be construed as references to such activities on anyone's email. But even more alarming is that it was found coming from a host of different people's devices who had previously been rumored to engage in such activities, as well as have a sordid past, which the Clintons are no stranger to, both officially and unofficially. Also, since we were in the midst of an election, when a bunch of people see Hillary and Hillary-related emails coming out of the blue, they are seeking to confirm whatever suspicions they initially may have had about her. So initially, a lot of people took this with a grain of salt, but what started changing minds were people noticed these bizarre food references in the emails, which not only were out of place, but clearly to many not discussing the food itself. Instead, millions believe and continue to believe that references to items such as hot dogs, pizza, and cheese pizza, and pasta were actually references to various kinds of children and child trafficking. It may sound far-fetched initially, but as we read through the emails and continue on with the story beyond that, which I've had bookmarked for, we begin to understand exactly why so many people were and are suspicious of what was really going on here. The first email I think that is worth reading was written by a woman named Tamara Lozado. Most won't recognize that name. We will discuss her after the fact. And the email reads as follows. With enormous gratitude to Advanced Man Extraordinaire Haber, I am popping up again to share our excitement about the reprise of our gang's visit to the farm in Lovettsville. And I thought I'd share a couple more notes. We plan to heat the pool, so a swim is a possibility. Bonnie will be Uber service to transport Ruby, Emerson, and Maeve Lozado, 11, 9, and almost 7, so you'll have some further entertainment, and they'll be in that pool for sure. And with the forecast showing prospects of some sun and a cooler temp of lower 60s, I suggest you bring sweaters or whatever attire will enable us to use our outdoor table with a pergola overhead, so we dine al fresco and ideally not al chillo. On its own, it's not the strangest email, although certainly odd, but it is weird enough to make you question, and it also seems to suggest that something more is going on. Specifically, the references very specific ones I might add to each of the children's ages, and that they will be in the pool for the adults' entertainment. This could be a strangely worded email, but something more seems to lie beneath the surface. What I have yet heard spoken about is who Tamara is, so I sought to find out and immediately regretted what I saw and read. The first thing to understand about Tamara is that prior to becoming Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, the role which she served when these emails were sent, she was previously a member of Senator John D. Rockefeller's Senate office. Not the OG Rockefeller, but Rockefeller IV. If you don't know why that's weird, I don't have enough time to get into them right now, but the Rockefeller family are known for many things beyond Standard Oil, including mass murder, genocide, the destruction of modern medicine, and eugenics. They are truly an evil bunch. Besides the point though, what's critical to understand is that Tamara eventually becomes his chief of staff and was Rockefeller's primary advisor on the National Commission on Children and the Pepper Commission on Healthcare. Well, there we go. An official government-level tie to children. But I find she is an interesting choice for such a position, considering the later emails we shall continue diving into, but also the history of her own children and grandchildren. Well, I should say before we hear about the children in the creepy emails about pools and quote-unquote entertainment, we actually end up seeing them on something called Evie's Crib first. This is a site I can only find archives of, but what it shows is plenty. This site I presume named after one of the children in some capacity, although the name Evelyn is not listed in the rest of the kids in that email. It houses obscene images of children and captions that belong nowhere. One such caption reads as follows. Evelyn is growing up. Soon she'll be the queen of the entire US of A. Right now, for a limited time only, you can spend time with her online, raw and uncut. Take advantage of this now, as in the future, she will have the power of life and death. What a freaking weird thing to say. Definitely not a weird thing to say at all, referring to one's daughter as raw and uncut, presumably because she's a baby, or how you should take advantage of her now. Seems a bit odd to me. Intriguingly, like we said, Evelyn's name is not listed at the pool party. Take that as you may. On this site, though, there are a number of photos that should never be online of her young, what I presume to be grandchildren. But what's even more curious is a certain post. This comes from July 23rd, 2009, 7 years prior to the alleged shot fired at Comet Ping Pong, and 6 years prior to the pool email. Tamara Lozado writes, Evie will be joined in daycare by her buddy Jack. I wanted to give you guys a chance to meet Jack by going to his blog here. Jack is owned by Ken Weber and Stephanie Copeland. A lot wrong going on here, including who this buddy is, but that's after we address the fact that, as this ancient screen cap clearly denotes, Tamara refers to this child as being owned by his parents. Children do belong to their parents. That's one of the many reasons why the government, as we can tell, needs to stay away from them. However, owned implies a different meaning when placed into the context that is slowly forming here. So let's peep who Evelyn's new friend Jack is. And here is Jack in all his glory. But Cooper, you say it's blurred. Did you make a mistake? No, I didn't. I can't show you this picture because it's a completely nude infant laying with everything hanging out, genitals partially covered by a tiny blue maple leaf. I even went and found the page on an ancient site, and although there is something written on the leaf, I cannot tell what it says. The caption, though, I do believe says more than enough for us and reads as follows. This is posted into the subsection of naked time, of which there are two. It was bath time again this weekend, which Jack celebrated in high style by slipping into the baby bath hammock, thanks Sarah C., before reuniting with the frog towel. Jack luxuriated and exfoliated in a warm soak by the kitchen window. Unrated version of this photo available only to premium subscribers, period. Winky face. This caption on top of a nude photo of your infant? Yeah, I'm not okay with that. And I think nude baby photos are weird, period. But if parents went to innocently take photos for a photo album they used to make fun of their kid 20 years later, and for the memes, I don't really care. but there is no acceptable excuse for how one takes such photos, uploads them to the internet, then suggests in a joking yet not joking manner that the uncovered baby nudes can be purchased. And evidently I'm not the only person who thought this or found this part of the rabbit hole, because there are posts up as recently as 2020 of people commenting how creepy this is, and then an anonymous user on this same thread, who I expect is Tamara, logged out of her account, saying that it's not weird, you're the weird one, don't make it weird. But what do I know, except that the woman writing thinly veiled emails, who's the chief of staff of Hillary Clinton, the broad implicated as being one of the ringleaders in this massive child slavery ring that we shall see later with DynCorp, which expands internationally, is posting in her free time photos of her naked children and offering to sell them unedited. A lot of dots, my friends, already, but as we shall see, this is merely the beginning. In fact, if you continue following this Tamara Lozado rabbit hole, you may find yourself going down a dark path, one that I refused to follow after a certain signpost, but right before stopping, I explored just a bit further and found certifiable family links for the Lozado family to Kabbalah, cannibalism, and explicit child pornographic imagery. These links are in fact so bad that the Internet Archive had to delete them from their site after they were saved by users going down this very same rabbit hole. The connections are actually really creepily direct between Lozado and these posts I'm going to read, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into them because I don't want to accidentally lead anybody to this weird corner of the internet, if I'm being honest. Fortunately though, I did not click on any of the image links, but I did click on one of the text threads for that site, and it was a conversation on sadistic desires relating to children. And to show you the sort of people this Tamara woman is connected to, I'm going to read you one post from a single user whose profile picture included violent pornographic imagery. This individual was discussing how they wanted to walk along the street, steal a woman off the street, take her back to their place, her, impregnate her, then 9 months later take the baby out of the womb, bit and side of it, and then shove that broken mess back into the whore. That last part being an exact quote. And this was the tame post on this website. Once again, I just want to add, you are the sum total of your friends and those who you are connected to. Continuing on, another email I would like to highlight is as follows. Mary and John, I think you should give notice when changing strategies which have been long in place. I immediately realized something was different by the shape of the box, and I contemplated who would be sending me something in the square-shaped box. Lo and behold, instead of pasta and wonderful sauces, it was a lovely, tempting assortment of cheeses. Yummy. I'm awaiting the return of my children and grandchildren from their holiday travels so that we can demolish them. Thank you so much. I hope you and the gang are well. I miss you both. Best wishes, Fro, a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Herb. P.S. Do you think I'll do better playing dominoes on cheese than on pasta? This email is pretty self-explanatory for why it's weird. I will get into it though in a second, but I want to emphasize this email is written by a fellow named Herb Sandler of the Sandler Foundation, who according to appropriate understanding of grammar enjoys demolishing his grandchildren, and he just can't wait for them to get back in order to do so. Honestly, what is wrong with these people? Even if there's nothing else going on, you had to have read that back to yourself and thought what it sounded like, right? Like you would have thought that sounded bad and then, let me rewrite that. And additionally, the way the pasta is referenced is not really possible, because who ships pasta to their friends in a box? And very simply, I don't think that's how that would even work. He's implying like almost a cardboard box, and he pops it open and goes, oh, there's cheese in here, not pasta with sauce. Like what? But clearly, based on what he says, it's easy for us to see that pasta and wonderful sauces have been shipped to him previously in boxes. And what on earth could he possibly mean by a tempting assortment of cheeses, considering the fact that the previous sentence about pasta was clearly not talking about pasta, in my opinion. All in all, this adds up about as well as a crackhead doing math, but like we did with the Tamara situation, let's take a closer look at who this Herbert fellow is. And like most of the people in these emails, it doesn't take much looking, because Herbert is a pretty famous individual, founder of Golden West Financial along with his wife Marion, which was a savings company in California, which allegedly sought to help boost poorer folks and help them build their wealth. Well, one thing came to another, and the company that started in the 1960s had become a behemoth by the early 2000s, with assets under management reaching $124.6 billion. What's funny about Herbert though, and his desire to help poor people, is that in mid-2006, Herbert and Marion decided they wanted to retire, but not after spending about 3 decades stacking up mountains worth of mortgage-backed securities onto their spreadsheet. Securities which they then sold to larger banks and institutions. And if you know anything about the mortgage-backed security, outside of Jeffrey Epstein, it was one of the instrumental factors in the 2008 housing market crash that destroyed the American economy permanently. unfortunately. So Herbert and Marion aren't exactly the kind people they claim to be, desiring to help the poor. In fact, they are a huge portion of the economic troubles we have today, and why so many can't even afford to eat. And even SNL, which is about as backward as they come, understood this and did a bit on the couple on October 4th of 2008. In 2006, the couple retired, which is convenient considering it was just before the crisis, but upon retiring, they transferred $1.3 billion to their Sandler Foundation, and I presume this is now untaxed and completely shielded money from the outside world, which is why the wealthy do foundations. And on their website for the multi-billion-dollar Sandler Foundation, which Herbert and Marion began, we see that they have a section dedicated to the safety of children, which somehow I doubt, based on your desire to demolish your own grandchildren, Herb. And this was an email I forgot about and found while searching and have basically seen no reporting on it whatsoever. And it's, in my opinion, one of the darkest and most apparent of all the emails in this case. And it reads as follows. Ari, you have a lollipop. Been meaning to thank you for being with me during my first lollipop experience. Appreciate your support and your steady presence. My only regret is that I didn't take my lollipop with me. Smile. Leia, has anyone notified you that you have a lollipop to be in the spin room at tonight's debate? Are you up for it? I'd be with you so you can tackle things not specific to the convention with you. First of all, lollipop in quotes, could you be more obvious? Second of all, lollipop is the word you choose. Anyone who reads this email knows they aren't talking about lollipops. It's dead obvious. So let me just read this description of what a lollipop is from the International Justice Mission. The word lollipop has a problem. I'm not referring to our addiction to sugary snacks, but something much darker, something more sinister. It's an unspoken epidemic that is facing our world and is destroying the lives of men, women, and children. Lollipop is a term sex offenders, predators, and used for victims of child pornography. Every 12 hours, 10,824 new images of child, also known as child images, are detected online. Every month, the Philippines receives more than 1,000 tips regarding the online exploitation of children. There is more details to this, including the lolly phenomena in anime. There's all sorts of disgusting avenues you can go down there, but lollipop is one of the most obvious terms for children ever. And in the email, they're clearly not referring to lollipops. So what's going on? And let's be honest with ourselves here. The answer is pretty obvious. The next email worth looking at is stupidly transparent, to the point this email can only be taken literally, or it's a complete misunderstanding. There is no code to misread and nothing cryptic about it. Last night was fun. Still in torture chamber. Another question. Do you want to have Feb 14 Valentine's Day dinner? Sent from my iPad. Now, you may be confused for a second why Podesta is emailing himself. Well, in reality, in relation to the suspicious emails, this is where we get introduced to Tony Podesta from. And it's Tony who's emailing John Podesta in this case. Now, Tony is a rabbit hole in and of himself, and he could be an entire video, but something worth noting about him is that in 2017, his massive lobbying firm that he began, he was forced to step down from because of investigations by the FBI. Good to know going into what we're going to be discussing next. The Podesta brothers combined are a power couple, influencing politics as a whole, but especially leftist politics and political thought. And many people take this email literally and assume he is referring to a child in a literal torture chamber, which is possible and also possibly untrue. But it's another side of Tony that really makes me and other people give credence to the thought that he could be talking about a very literal torture chamber at this moment, as what stands out about Fat Tony Podesta is his obsession and collection of disturbing art, disturbing being an understatement. Much of it, in fact the mass majority of it, I'm not going to be able to show here because it's either porn or children, and it would completely violate every term of service, so I'm going to have to stick to the ones I can show you, and if there's something else, I'll just pull it up for you. Indeed, there's so much art I can't show it all, let alone talk about each of them, so I'm just going to have them circulating on screen for you to admire, which seems like a bad word in this context. Alright, so first one, anyone in their right mind, the red flag should be waving right now. What is that thing? It's grabbing a child and touching its butt. And if there's anything that's made me lose faith in mankind, it's that there are people online who describe this as amazing, beautiful, and evoking a powerful response. And those people I refuse to believe are alive, and instead I just want to assume, for our sake, that they're just bots, but I don't know, because some people actually think that this is art. This next piece we only know exists because of a picture of Tony Podesta's stairwell, and you can see in the distance a child wearing a diaper being lifted up by a man pretty harshly based on how much squeezing is going on. This next one, with Fat Tony in the background, many presume to be based off of the death pose of one of Dahmer's victims. Dahmer enjoyed putting his victims in what he referred to as funny or cool poses. The other angles of this statue also show that it has been decapitated, and I would be hard-pressed to be convinced the making of this statue had nothing to do with the Dahmer pose, considering they matched down to the physique. I'm not sure if I'll be able to show the image of the Dahmer victim, but I'll show as much as I can. Also, Fat Tony smiling like he won the Little League Championship with the corpse art of a Dahmer victim in front of him, that is peak evil. This next one, which is just a woman lying on her back on a tiny bed, and it sort of reminds me of the Epstein massage room at his various estates. Already not something you should own. It's creepy and wrong, but this is actually a 2-piece set, or many pieces really. And mind you, this is a miniature anatomical wax statue with a removable front torso, so there should be no surprise what the next image in this set is going to be. And it's this. A woman with her organs being flung out dead on some weird mattress thing. And the name of the art is Dismembered, shocker. And be honest, if your mother or father owned a piece of art glorifying the slaughter, dismemberment, and removal of organs from a woman, would you, like me, be sprinting out the door? But when a DC lobbyist influencing the fate of mankind has this sort of art in his house, one should be asking more questions and seeing what Fat Tony is really up to, because his collections don't leave a lot of room for misinterpretation. It's like the Key and Peele skit where the rapper confesses to murder on a track and everyone says it's just art. No, this isn't art. This is evil, disgusting garbage claiming to be art but serving as a confession, or really more of an obsession with what he's done or is involved in. And there is no person I know who, if they own that piece, I wouldn't immediately assume they were up to the most nefarious acts imaginable. And there are literally hundreds of pieces of art this guy owns, each of which is somehow more nefarious than the last. In fact, I had to take a break going through all of them I could find online because they are just that vile. The ones I've showed you don't even compare. That being said, we know that Podesta has at least 700 pieces of art as of 2015. Interestingly though, most of it has not been seen by the public. Indeed, when you go to the internet and you look up Podesta's art collection, you can find the National Gallery website, and that only houses 181 of what are referred to as his selected works. And many of these have also had their images removed from the website, which means they must be terrible, because there are also actual images of just porn on this National Gallery website, and yet they had to take these other things down. So what are these other things? And remember, these are on display in our country. Feel free to look it up for yourself, but the same imagery arises, that being an obsession with erotic material, including a sickening number of partially and entirely nude females, both old and young. Plenty of hints at dismemberment, and even a clear obsession with children, and these are on public display. Indeed, we do know things get pretty wild in Podesta's home, because the Washington Post reported that visitors to Podesta's house reported getting an eyeful when they walked into a bedroom at the Tony Podesta residence hung with multiple color pictures by Katie Grannon, a photographer known for documentary-style pictures of naked teenagers in their parents' suburban homes. I would like to know who these parents are and have a stern discussion with them. I would also like to know why that's allowed to take, or to print, or to have in your house, because that's porn of children. Like I said, there are more images of this kind than you can imagine, and I can't show them here. So I'm gonna go on to what I find to be the most telling image outside of the disgusting porn ones, and that's this following image. It depicts a scene where a group of children are being hunted. The children are either partially or entirely nude, and in the distance, 2 men are watching them menacingly, one of which is holding something black that looks like a rope to me, while the other is holding a gun. They appear to be seeking to capture the children, and the children themselves display fear by hiding from the men and keeping a distance. And if you still think these are all coincidences and art is subjective, then I presume you are of the same ilk that thinks lobotomies are healthy and everyone should get one. The imagery isn't merely suggestive though, it just directly states what's going on. You can't have bodies being ripped apart on your walls and child porn hanging next to it while sending thinly veiled emails and then write it all away. And one of the most alarming things about this Podesta case in his house is that there's an image of a little girl. It's a painting, and you can see it in a couple photos of his house, and it's a little girl who looks like she was just molested. Her clothes are all disheveled and she's sitting there with a dead-eyed stare. Back to the emails. Let's continue with the one that I find to be the most indicative of the spiritual and, dare I say, demonic element at play in all of this. The next email reads as follows. Dear Tony, I am so looking forward to the spirit cooking dinner at my place. Do you think you'll be able to let me know if your brother is joining? All my love, Marina Ambramovic. Okay, so this is the sort of email where if you've done investigation into this topic, you've probably seen it, and if you have no idea what we're talking about, just wait. Both groups are probably catching on though that what stands out about this email is the reference to spirit cooking. And at its heart, it's a legitimate witchcraft, demonic worship ritual that was popularized by this Marina chick writing the email, who is a legitimate demon worshiper, witch, whatever you want to call her. And that's no overstatement. I'm going to play some clips of hers on screen now. Popularly, she's referred to as a performance artist, but I surmise that only the Reddit bot and mod class and people in the same activities actually believe that. One of her most infamous, quote, performance stunts was when she left some 5 items on a table and had people come up to them and do whatever they wanted to her. She was stripped, beaten, and one of the items was a gun with a bullet next to it. Someone picked up the gun, loaded it, and held it to her head. She was not killed though. And this was in the 70s. Since then, she's just tweaked out and fallen off at the same time. And now, like every witch, she's left sad and alone. So, with this spirit cooking thing, I think it's worth us giving a little bit of a refresher on what we're talking about. It is a form of cooking, so there are ingredients, but spirit cooking has a bit of a deeper meaning. It involves the mixing of blood as your base substance with fresh breast milk mixed with fresh sperm. And this blood is meant to be gathered by slashing a wound onto your middle finger and then letting the blood drip out. What's very interesting is that there are also emails of him complaining and talking to Marina about his finger not having healed yet. So we know that he did conduct spirit cooking with Marina before, which at the bare minimum is an occult ritual taking place with the highest ranking political officials in all of Washington, D.C. But back to the recipe, one is supposed to then drink this concoction or eat it. I would imagine this would be pretty chunky. But Marina tells us that one is supposed to consume it, we'll say, on what she calls earthquake nights, which could have a deeper meaning, or it could just be a night where there's an earthquake. And there's a lot of things wrong with this. The main one being that it's absolutely evil and incredibly disgusting. But we know that Ambramovic takes this pretty seriously, as there are a few copies of a video from the 1990s where Marina is preparing for such an event, and it's vomit-worthy. We can even see her mixing the blood and having her little servants mix the blood. What entertains me most, though, about this is that there are still some weirdos online who defend this behavior and claim it's not true and that it's not some sort of satanic worship, when even she admits it's satanic worship. But even more humorous is that once the emails leaked and Marina caught some flack for what she said in said emails, she told the press that it was just a funny name that they used and the menu was completely normal that night. Which obviously is shenanigans. Clearly you're trying to cover your butt. Spirit cooking has only ever and will ever mean one thing, and it's this weird devilish occult ritual that you popularized. But moreover, we know this is the recipe and we know this is what spirit cooking means because there's a copy of her original manuscript cookbook that had like 25 editions ever printed, and in it she details the man milk, the woman milk, and the blood. It's heinous. So the question then is simple. How do you feel knowing that at the bare minimum, the people who shape the future of this nation in the globe are drinking sperm mixed with blood and breast milk? Just some food for thought. The pun was not intended there, though. So keeping all this in mind, we can see that clearly there is enough here to disprove the notion that the mainstream media outlets wish to push, and do push, which is that Pizzagate is a baseless conspiracy theory. Because at the bare minimum, we do know that weird, cryptic emails were being sent between the ultra-wealthy and politically connected and powerful, and they are discussing occult rituals, more of which we will get into later. But my bad, like I'm supposed to say, there's no evidence for this conspiracy whatsoever, and we should all go back to our regular scheduled state-sponsored programming. All jokes aside, continuing with the emails, for which we are almost through, there is one that goes above and beyond the rest and seems to break the code a little bit more than the others. And it reads as follows: did you leave a handkerchief? Hi John, the realtor found a handkerchief. Parentheses, I think it has a map that seems pizza related. Is it yours? They can send it if you want. I know you are busy, so feel free not to respond if it's not yours or you don't want it. Suzanne. Now, many people speculate here that this is one of the most direct references to the underlying messaging. What stands out to me though is that if this is a handkerchief with a stain, why not say that? Instead, Suzanne says that it's a map, which appears to be pizza related. And what the heck does that even mean then? What's a map in this case? There is no word that I can find that comes close to meaning stain, is spelt with 3 letters, and could accidentally be mistyped on a keyboard. So then we must assume until we know otherwise that it is intentional, and if so, then it gives further credence to the notion that there are children being referred to here. And most people assume that map is a sort of semen-related stain, and obviously pizza-related is child-related. However, I do find that this is a good point to bring up the main spook opposition, and it's an intriguing question, and that is simply that if these are people discussing cryptic things, why would they use food terms? It's so stupid and silly. And my easy retort to that is because of what you just said. When you read something that says pizza related and talks about maps, it gives you enough plausible deniability for those unwilling to really research the case to immediately write it off as silly, because it does inherently sound silly. I'll be the first to admit. On a certain level, this sounds harmless, but we know enough about these political figures to know that they aren't harmless. So then we have to assume that these things that do stand out as strange, when you can connect a lot of these dots, have something going on. Now, yap session over, let's get back to it. But things do get weird when we see how many dots connect here, from the pizza to the pasta to the hot dogs to the cheese to the lollipops, or in Obama's case, the $65,000 worth of hot dogs that he had privately flown in. Just something to think on. Quote, subject RE, get ready for Chicago Hot Dog Friday. I think Obama spent about $65,000 of the taxpayers' money flying in pizza dogs from Chicago for a private party at the White House not long ago. Assume we are using the same channels? That is just something to think about. about. But a 2007 FBI document acquired by WikiLeaks would suggest otherwise, that the people who are doubting this, the spooks as we call them, are incorrect, and that we should be reading into cryptic text and messaging and symbols. There's a document detailing the symbols and methods of communication used by pedestals works to show these sorts of activities they enjoy. For instance, the following symbols for, quote, boy lovers, or hearts like these for, quote, girl lovers, or the following for, quote, child lovers, or this one, which is the online logo for an organization that seeks to decriminalize rape, which is what it is when you attempt a quote-unquote romantic relationship with a child. Because I don't care what many try and say today, there is no such thing as a child's consent to such matters. But with this, we have a clear through line that these groups dealing in children will use bizarre symbols for their purposes. But it does go further than just this. This 2007 FBI document, which was later leaked, also reveals some of the methods used by pedestals for getting this information across. And this information comes from pedos who were later caught and searched, and from items that were found on them or in their homes. So what you're telling me then is there are nefarious groups and organizations engaged in trafficking and exploitation of children who will use cryptic forms of communication that you might not notice and might seem silly, and that it's not just a conspiracy theory. Oh, got it. Also worth mentioning, if this was utilized as far back as 2007, which was 18 years ago, side note, feel old yet? Then imagine how many more symbols and technologies are being used today for covert communications. It's not like they're stuck in the dark ages. At this rate, you probably know one, whether or not you are aware of it. And way back when I did a video on what was likely a trafficking ring operated out of a diner in Grand Rapids, there was a point where we pulled out the map and there were countless offenders in the city, 5 times the national average, a huge portion of which were child offenders, to the point where you had a neighbor within a few doors that was one. So it's highly probable that this same sort of activity is going on next door or a few blocks down the street. Now, speaking of it down the street, let's connect some dots. What we haven't discussed about the emails is that so many of them reference one place, that being Comet Ping Pong. Comet Ping Pong is a pizza place that has ping pong, and at the surface is no more than that. It's in Washington, D.C., and is run by a fellow who I refuse to call a man named James Alefantis. Ostensibly, Alefantis is a local pizza shop owner, as well as an art gallery owner and founder of several other restaurants. He became infamous in 2016 when, according solely to official narratives, a man named Edgar Madison Welch entered his humble ping pong pizza shop and claimed he was going to save the children from the basement, where he believed they were hidden for unknown reasons. More on that whole story later though. But for most, that's the pinnacle of James Alefantis in this story. He owned the shop that was unfortunately the scene of a ridiculous conspiracy theory, which is how everyone sounds to me when they use that term. But what we get out of this is that everyone should feel really bad for this Alefantis guy and look no further. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is nowhere near where the story begins or ends for James Alefantis. The more astute might notice some things that are off about him. Firstly, for a pizza shop owner, he has some incredibly powerful friends. Viewing his Instagram, we find photos of personal letters from Hillary Clinton, photos from campaign rallies, photos of Obama playing ping pong with a child, presumably taken by Alefantis, followed by a series of images which show Alefantis and Podesta, including one where Alefantis is holding a pizza pool floaty with, oh yeah, of all things, a creepy silhouette of a female behind the two of them. But that is simply the beginning. This allegedly humble pizza shop owner has an Instagram full of depraved crap. I'm going to warn you, there is an archive of it online, if you can find it, from before James privated it in the days after the scandal erupted, and on there you will find literal graphic images, like actual on his Instagram, as well as people engaged in various sexual acts on pizza or utilizing pizza. His Instagram also then contains weird, creepy, and in some cases downright disturbing photos of children, like the one of Obama playing ping pong with a child in the White House while people watch in what looks like some weird basement. But far more questionable is the photo of a little girl James alleges to be his niece, with the top half of her sprawled out on top of a ping pong table that he has taped her hands to. Mind you, this girl, her face is blurred, but she's no more than 5 years old, if that. And I'm not sure how anyone can defend that as harmless play, as I've seen posted online, especially considering the caption is #chickenlover, which is seen several times across his Instagram and is an unmistakable sign of something being awry, considering it's a known term for acts and tendencies. And combining that with naked photos of males and females, some of which I believe are him, with pizza covering their genitals, one has to wonder many things. One, how did he not get banned from Instagram for this? And two, and much more importantly, why is this guy posting this? A guy who's close friends with seemingly everyone connected to these emails? And he's the guy who owns the restaurant that all these people rumored to be tied up in a deplorable ring are all referencing as the best pizza joint in the spot to visit? I have never nor will ever believe in coincidences. there's a rhyme and a reason to all things. So now with so many tally marks in favor of organized child trafficking and exploitation cult, one has to wonder what's going on here. And I'll theorize more later because I will remain fact focused. But without even diving into his Instagram posts, which I can't show on here so we can't dive into, we should take a gander though at his profile picture, which appears to be a statue of a man from long ago. And that would be correct, but it's not just any man. Reverse image searching, one may find that it's actually a statue of Antinous. And Antinous, I didn't know and you might not know, is the little boy that essentially served as Hadrian's slave. Historians, for whatever reason, like to call him Hadrian's lover, but considering they met when Antinous was 12, I'm not going to stoop so low as them, as that would be implying consent could be given, which, as we've been over, children cannot give consent for such acts. So the short used the death of this little boy and created an entirely new cult around his dead little boy that he raised for almost a decade. And in this cult, Hadrian made Antinous a quote-unquote god. And I'll just let you fill in the blanks on how you think this cult worshipped their quote god. Many historians also consider the statues and busts made of Antinous some of the best examples of ancient pedophilia. Unsurprisingly, because many of the statues have his schlong out and he has a strange abusive air to him, like he's not totally there in his own mind, and it's pretty effeminate seeming in a lot of these. But if you're curious what I mean by that, look him up sometime, although be wary because it's technically an ancient form of child pornography, as many of them were made specifically for Hadrian's pleasure, with one of the most well-known and intact pieces being found in the remnants of Hadrian's estate. And as one historian notes, whoever made most of these statues depicted Antinous at the age he met and began being by Hadrian, which would have been done at Hadrian's bequest, which then pings these statues at roughly the age of 12 or 13 or 14. And we know this because in ancient CP making customs, when depicting a younger boy, you would do so, quote, without pubic hair and with carefully represented groin tissue. And most of the material we have on this fellow fits just that pattern. One of the many reasons Antinous statues are considered a staple in studying ancient food. This seems like the one Roman figure you wouldn't want to have as your profile picture when being heavily suspected and investigated for dealing in children and handing them out to wealthy and powerful individuals who come to you to them, or for material about that activity. And you know exactly the same situation that happened to the guy we just discussed in your profile picture. Definitely just a coincidence though, right guys? All these in mind, the number of similarities I'm noticing between Epstein and Alefantis is disturbing. The child infatuation, erotic imagery for the public to see, powerful connections to politicians and the most wealthy people in America, something else is going on here. And we get another sign of what that something else may be in a GQ magazine 2012 edition that cites the 50 most powerful people in Washington. And if you had to guess, in a place where senators, representatives, lobbyists, billionaires, and even the president resides, who do you think made it onto that list, coming in at number 49? You guessed it, our humble pizza purveyor, James Alefantis. So then what makes him so powerful if he only owns a small handful of restaurants and what is referred to as a small art gallery? And the only clear sign as to what that power could be for me is his obvious connection to the most powerful people in Washington, D.C. and in America. For those spooks though in the comments, before writing something vaguely pretentious and annoying, be helpful. Find me another reason he's on that list if he owns just a few restaurants and a small art gallery. I bet you can't. So speaking of powerful people in Washington, another source for Alefantis' power would be his well-known physical relationship and romantic relationship with a man, and not just any man, but David Brock, the founder of what people and organizations both on the left and right consider to be a hard left media watchdog organization, named Media Matters. The purpose of this organization ostensibly is to monitor what they refer to as false narratives coming from the right-leaning news media sources, as well as make some of their own content. And it's obviously not very difficult to see, looking at Snopes and other mainstream media and fact checkers, that it's pretty common for these organizations to be used to block or reduce the spread of news stories that harm your side's candidates. It's sort of like shooting out flares in a fighter jet when a heat-seeking missile is launched at you. The missile tracks onto the other heat sources and then just flies away. It's the same thing here, except Media Matters publishes articles or influences others to publish articles to throw investigators off the scent. So suffice it to say, it's fair to suggest that it had a pretty considerable role to play in the current perspective that many have on the gate. That being that is a far-right conspiracy theory meant to harm Hillary Clinton's campaign. But let's take a closer look at Media Matters and see if it too has a trail of corruption like so many discussed today. And even Wikipedia, of all places, has to admit something is off at least slightly considering the Media Matters institution, because they are currently being sued for publishing defaming and fake media, or being investigated by the Attorney General of Texas for potentially fraudulent activity and to ensure that the public has not been deceived. And alongside him, the Missouri Attorney General is doing the same. So suffice it to say, Media Matters is not exactly the creme creme de la creme, but is nonetheless an organization that does have influence, releasing studies on other orgs and sort of acting like a stamp of approval for what is liked and disliked and approved and disproved, and what we should consider news and not news. And funny enough, funding for this organization has come from other hugely powerful politicians and wealthy individuals and groups, like George Soros, everyone's favorite economy destroyer, or Bill Clinton, who actually gave them the office space to start the organization. Wow, how generous. And guess where that office space was located? In another think tank known as the Center for American Progress, which think tanks are total baloney, but that's neither here nor there right now. The important thing to know is that one specific fellow started that other think tank, and his name is John Podesta, the lad whose name appears thousands of times in the assumedly child-related emails, and the brother of the dude who has the CP art. So now with Bill and Hillary and the Podestas appearing once more, seems like in a very long way, we have a circle of familiar faces and names forming. And it's a circle I certainly believe is worth looking more into, although undoubtedly the more you look, the more you will find that the circle continues to expand. But as for Alefantis, you don't even have to look that hard to know this guy is up to no good. He posts image of selling children on his Instagram, so if that doesn't warrant an investigation, nothing will. Back to the pizza place itself though, Comet Ping Pong, it should serve as no surprise that the weirdness is not kept merely to the confines of Alefantis Instagram. There are all sorts of things wrong with this joint. Normally I don't get too much into symbology because it's often full of schizo posting, unless it's just dead obvious, but in this case, it really is, and there's too much at play, especially considering the FBI released all the PDF file imagery we need to start making connections, and showed us that even shapes which share similarity to the ones they gave can be related. So I'll go rapid fire for this as best I can. The menus in Comet Ping Pong show 2 ping pong paddles, and initially this is nothing to be concerned with in and of itself, but upon a second glance, they heavily resemble the child lover image from the FBI to be on the lookout for, or to be on the lookout for anything related or similar. But that's by far the least disturbing and incriminating thing here. The murals of Comet Ping Pong rival Tony Podesta's art for weirdness, depicting adults, most of whom are wearing no clothes, parading children and or the heads of children around, along with bizarre creatures enclosed in an embrace in the background. Not sure how you're supposed to play ping pong looking at that, but I will add that one of these humanoids appears to be wearing a crown. Make of that power dynamic what you shall. The bathrooms are also littered in pornographic graffiti, which was either a stylistic choice from Alefantis, and he had it created this way, or he just left it up because he liked it. The musical acts that Comet Pizza advertises for and hosts at their venue also go beyond what one might anticipate if this were merely some random theory. For instance, one of the groups that performs in Comet Pizza is named Heavy Breathing, and the other is named Stains. So we are already not off to a great start here, as it's not exactly the people I would normally anticipate to be performing at a pizza joint. But it goes further. In one of these songs, there is a scene where 2 characters discuss, you guessed it, the song is by Heavy Breathing and it's named I Know Love. The music video somehow on YouTube contains direct imagery of a nude female and other disgusting and perverted imagery, as well as this little gem of dialogue. The character on the left is named Bram72. Hey, do you ever go to house shows? And on the right, the character Majestic Ape 29 says, huh? Gross, ... What are you, a There's actually a whole rabbit hole where people believe this Majestic Ape fellow is actually James Alefantis, but we don't have that sort of time to go down there. Comment if you're interested in that. Nonetheless, let's go further to the other band named Stains. They have a song named Land of La La that has plenty of sexual material of its own and the thematic design of an MK Ultra victim's nightmares, but the astute noticed something I cannot take credit for because I can't make it through the video without becoming ill. But what others who did make it through noticed is that a symbol on this box in the background directly resembles the one the FBI warned us means boy lover and tells us to be on the lookout for any variant of it, and it appears not only once in this video but can be seen throughout the entirety of the video at various intervals. Hard to convince me that something that looks so similar was purely coincidental, but let's move on. The evidence goes well beyond the images alone. There's a video that implies the darkest things imaginable are taking place at Comet Ping Pong or nearby. Uploaded in the early days of YouTube, March 26 of 2007, this video is entitled Ping Pong in a Public Place, with just under 360,000 views as of the time of writing. It is critically underwatched. Be forewarned, you are only going to see 2 blokes playing ping pong and cars driving by, but it's not what you see that raises hairs. Instead, it's what you hear. Listen closely. Not typically the place you'd expect to find children at night. Yes, this is a pizza joint, but it's also a bar, so the vast majority of the customers are drinking. So a child being there at night is kind of odd in and of itself, especially outside, seemingly alone. Well, or I should say without parents. But a child being there and begging for help is an entirely different kind of sign. There is no other way to take it. These are evidently screams of fear, a child begging for help, and at one point she says what I think is, "Daddy, help me?" But if I were to wager, no one came to save her. But what makes this even more disturbing is that I have a lot of evidence that suggests that there are missing children directly connected to this place and to the people involved, but we will get into that later. As of now though, this is just another sign that something afoul is running amok. And if this really is what we suspect we just heard on that camera, then God, please hold that child near to you and your son Jesus for all time. Amen. Intriguingly, the original uploader of this video seems to either know what he has or be completely unaware, because the titling is only about the ping pong, but the hundreds if not thousands of comments across each version on the internet all reference the screaming. It certainly is quiet, but it's not that quiet where if you posted this to the internet and you were watching it through, it's not like you wouldn't notice, it's still clearly there. This is also the video that has been known to get taken down on certain occasions, therefore the titling may be a method of obfuscating anyone who may wish to have it removed. So I'm glad we've made another archive of it online here for posterity's sake. But even stranger and somewhat ironic is that there's another restaurant vaguely connected about a block down from Comet Pizza that also sells pizza, which does have a basement, and the restaurant's name is Besta Pizza, and has a logo that nearly identically matches some of the symbols that are given to us from the FBI. A logo that this Besta Pizza changed right when the gate first broke. And there's also another joint named Beyond Borders across the street that matches almost exactly that of the Girl Lover logo from the FBI. Just worth note. It's hard to convince me that anyone can believe all these are coincidences, so I have a magnificent piece of riverside property I would just really like to sell you in the nether. Boy, I could cook on Comet Ping Pong for hours, from the rumors and images of a basement freezer to the countless other posts we didn't get to, but there is nonetheless something else we need to discuss so we can introduce the next topic, which will be the alleged shooting, as well as just keep the video moving. So what we first must cover are the rumors of a server being hosted from a back room in Comet Ping Pong, or what one might suspect are rumors until we learn a little bit more. To most, these servers are complete speculation and are denied by the mainstream media or not even brought up, but as we discuss later with Edgar, it is allegedly one of the things that motivated him to conduct the quote-unquote shooting. So there's a lot riding on this part of the story, and it's very interesting what happens, but I'll quit the yap. This begins with the disturbing account of a single man who, in the wake of the gate and the emails breaking, decided to take it upon himself to pry open the case a bit further for us to see what we could get at. And while poking around the Comet Pizza website, he stumbled into what essentially amounts to the back rooms. It was this bizarre webpage that had a chart which listed a series of files, their sizes most of which appear to be very large, video size large, the date, the tag, a section to input the DL key or download key I presume, and a button to download. Now as you can see from the screen, this technically inclined individual has uncovered a members private area on the Comet Ping Pong site, and in no world should there even be a private members area on a pizza website, but brushing that aside for a moment, the notion that there are dozens of encrypted video-sized files hosted on the Comet Pizza Ping Pong website makes no sense. And rather humorously, I heard one individual try and write it away as security camera footage, but one, then it would have been labeled for the camera and the date, and two, it wouldn't be hosted on the website with encryption keys. That's so silly. So what else could be going on here then? Except the absolute worst things possible, and much like Epstein, everything that is alleged to have gone on is being recorded and perhaps is even out there to be downloaded by those in the know for their viewing pleasure. Furthermore, the site is /was evidently being monitored because the following day the password was changed and new obstacles were placed to prevent anyone from seeing this. So for us today, the site's page no longer exists when you look up Comet Pizza online, and when you look at the Wayback Machine, the best we can get is a password protected page. This one, as far as we are aware, we can't even find today. All of this to say that someone is clearly actively involved to keep this hidden. For now though, we have to take a different turn, so please keep this server and this strange, bizarre, download-filled website in mind. I am gonna have to cliffhanger you there. I actually have episode 2 written already for this one, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this. It's been a crazy deep dive to make, but I could tell the Oklahoma City video, it just didn't seem like as many people were interested, so I'm happy to go back to that if you guys would like me to. But I thought this might be a more interesting and happening topic, especially with all the Epstein stuff, and I think we might have overlooked some things here related to the gate. So I just wanted to give this a try and see how it goes. I hope you guys like it though. Also growing the mustache, so you'll get to see that progress through the outro. Never had a mustache. I've already been made fun of, and I got a bad haircut, guys. It's been a rough hair week. Seriously though, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your guys' support so much. Thank you for the Patreon supporters. Paul, you know who you are. And everyone out there, it means the world. I'm gonna be getting more stuff out there here in the next few weeks, and then for all the channel members, thank you. It's a whole process, you guys, and I'm really grateful to have you guys here along the way. We're almost at 100K, and I'm just so excited. Thank you guys for being awesome. Hope you guys really enjoy this series. That being said, I love life, and I can't wait to see each and every one of you in the next one.